Okay. Good morning, Noblesville. It is Friday, April 3rd. The sun was shining. The sun was shining yesterday. It's going to be a great day. I'm Mayor Chris Jensen. It's an honor to be with you. Hopefully, some of you are joining us from around the city, around the county, the state, even around the country. I hope you join in and have a great conversation with us. I am honored to have a good friend of mine and a good friend of our city, Kristen Boyce, join me today. Kristen's not only a small business owner at Pathways to Healing, which I'll let her talk about here in a minute. She's a mother of two wonderful daughters as well. And she is a husband or a wife to Mark Boyce, who is a member of our city council. So a lot of connections, a lot of relatable statistics. So Kristen, thank you for joining me this morning.
Thank you so much, Mayor Jensen, for having me. I'm honored and I'm thrilled, and I hope this is helpful to people as we navigate the collective grief, loss, anxiety, and stress that everyone's feeling right now. So I just hope this is beneficial to those listening.
Well, there's a lot of that. We're going to touch on each one of those topics, especially with the news yesterday that school will be closed to the remainder of the school year. I know I have three small kids at home. You have two young daughters. It was a collective groan from some. I'm sure there were some kids that, while maybe somewhat excited, I still think deep down inside are probably going to be missing their friends and missing their teachers. School is oftentimes such a safe place for a lot of our students. So we'll get into that a little bit. But Kristen, if we could start a little bit talking about your industry, kind of the mental health industry, the therapy industry, talk a little bit about what you do. And then most importantly, how are you adapting in this time of social distancing? You know, we'll point out that you and I are not together. We are tele together here today, practicing social distancing. But how is your industry kind of adapting to this?
Yeah, that's a great question. We've really had to pivot as an industry, and Pathways to Healing Counseling, my whole team, we're now doing what we call teletherapy. A lot of people refer to it telehealth, telecounseling. We call it teletherapy on HIPAA compliant video platform. Although it has been waived that we can use other platforms like Zoom, FaceTime, and other mediums to reach people that are not HIPAA compliant. So that has been waived at this point in order to service as many people as possible. So it's been wonderful to be able to connect with clients and those that are seeking counseling services via video chat. So it's the next best thing. It's just as effective to be able to see someone on face-to-face. So I can see their facial expressions, I can see their emotions and their breathing, and still make that connection, which has been really beneficial to the client and us as therapists.
Let's talk a little bit about a topic you just mentioned, something I heard you speak a few years ago at, I believe it was maybe a Prevail breakfast, where you talked a lot about breathing. And it's something that I took away from there and something I try to practice on a daily basis. As most of the city knows, I'm on day, I think, 90 of this brand new job. I've had a lot of firsts in the past 3 months. The past 2 weeks have been almost surreal to be in the seat that I'm in. And I have tried to focus more on my breathing because you taught me that is important as we exhale especially, to focus on our breathing. So why don't you touch a little bit on that, and maybe some advice that you can give to parents that are at home right now. Maybe kids are bouncing off the walls and this is a moment of SOS for them. And so how would you advise them on that?
Yeah. And wow, you got thrown to the wolves in the first 90 days of office. So
Right.
first of all, I can imagine the breathing has come in very handy at times.
Mm-hmm.
Breathing is the number one strategy to able to handle the stress, the grief, the loss, the anxiety, the overwhelm. So number one, if I could teach anybody anything, it's this. We have to self-regulate. And right now everybody's kind of flipped their lids, which is understandable because all the normalcy is gone. So what we do is I teach people what we call square breathing. And the military has embraced this as well. Before they go into special forces or special ops, they have to get their bodies calm to be able to process what's actually happening all emotionally. So the first thing I teach people and clients when they come in is I'm like, we're going to breathe. And they're like, oh, man. Nobody wants to do it, right? It's annoying. Do we have to do it? And then I say, just trust me. I need you to do this once an hour, every single hour until I meet with you again. They're like, I go, just throw me a bone. Just try it. So what we're going to do is we're going to practice this together. So if you're watching right now, I'll make it very simple. We'll do one breath. So we won't torture you too much. And I need you to know, if you're not practicing this, it's not going to help you calm down. And I mean this in the genuine sense. There's scientific research, neuroscience to back this up. It is my number one skill that I practice in my own life. Could it survive this without it? So what we're going to do is we're going to inhale for 4 through your nose, hold for 4, and exhale for 8 slowly out your mouth like you're cooling soup. You're going to get the maximum benefit of that breath with the exhale through the mouth, which is very different. And kids, I like to do smell the cookie, cool the cookie. And so that's something you could teach kids, bubble blowing with children and adults, really. We're not immune to this either. Blowing bubbles with your kids is very helpful to calm that nervous system down. And this is a life skill that I teach so we can handle the hard in life. We're not taught to handle the hard. The media is bombarding us. Of course, they're trying to educate us as well. And we don't know how to tolerate that, so our nervous systems get hijacked. So let's practice this together. We're going to inhale for 4 through your nose. Hold for 4 if you can. Release for 8 slowly out your mouth. You might feel a little lightheaded because you're not used to it. And you're going to drop those shoulders down when you do that breath. So we're going to do it one more. Okay, I said it was going to be 1, but we're going to throw in 2. Okay, so let's do it one more time. Inhale. Or notice the difference that you feel. And if we're not regulated as parents, trust me, I've been dysregulated a few times because we're humans and we're together 24/7. This is my number one teaching tool for parents. Number 1, you got to breathe. My kids are like, you're breathing again. I'm like, do you want crazy mama or do you want calm mama? Because what happens is the nervous system, this is my little brain model for Dan Siegel, is we flip our lids. This is fight, flight, or freeze. And we come up with a lot of defenses. And I'm trying to get to a calm state. This is the prefrontal cortex that says, I can handle this. I got this. This is the calm brain. So the breathing gets you to the calm brain. If we can help our kids learn to handle hard feelings, they can tolerate hard. A lot of times our kids don't want to do the hard things, and we don't either. This is my number 1 strategy.
This is awesome. So I'm sure my wonderful wife, Julie Jensen's watching. She is doing a course at Butler right now on the prefrontal cortex, doing a educational neuroscience. There's so much science behind this and how the brain reacts, not only within us, but within our kids. So talk a little bit, you're a mother, if you don't mind, put on your mom hat for a second and talk a little bit about how maybe some things that you're doing at home with your 2 daughters. Tell their age. Are they middle school right now?
They're in middle school, 6th grade and 8th grade.
Yeah. You're in the throes of middle school girls, right? So what are you doing? What are you doing at home as a mom to kind of help handle this very uncertain time for our kids?
Number 1, we're acknowledging the feelings. We're acknowledging the feelings. I'm acknowledging my own feelings of grief, loss, anxiety, fear, and I'm acknowledging theirs. We're processing through the feelings. Now, not all kids talk about their feelings. They can draw it out. They can write it out. You can do a journal where you write out a question, put it on in their room. They can write you back. There's lots of ideas. Processing. We know trauma, and I want to give this quote out to Dr. Peter Levine. Trauma is not what happens to us, but what we hold inside in the absence of empathic witness. And as a mom, I'm the empathic witness for my children's emotions. And so what I do is I say, it's okay to be upset. It's okay to cry. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to have your feelings. Now, it's not okay to hit hit, punch, bite, so that what's okay and what's not okay are boundaries. But letting them process their feelings right now, I know 5th graders, 8th graders, seniors, and college seniors, collegiate athletes, high school athletes, middle school athletes, elementary are missing their friends. They're missing their teachers. And I think the teachers are missing them as well. They're also having grief, administrators, and letting them have their feelings and acknowledge it. So it said, I will say something like, it's okay to have your feelings. I love that phrase. It's okay to have your feelings. It makes sense. You feel sad right now. It's okay to let it out. And so we do a lot of let it out. It's okay to get it out. What we know about healing is the more we can process in real time, the more we're going to move through it and get to the other side. So I do a lot of acknowledgement of the feelings. That's number 1, my number 1 strategy. I brought props. Can't
Yeah.
do an interview with me without props.
Perfect.
There now, I know we can't Amazon Prime things, so there are free questions online. This is called the Game, and it asks questions like, "How are you feeling today? What's your favorite Disney character, and why? What hero would you be? What hero do you identify the most with, and why?" There's tons of questions online for free that you can pull cards. These are just little cards that you pull from. We've been doing a lot of these because I'm into the processing. We weren't taught oftentimes as kids that processing is important. We now know neuroscience is extremely important. They need energy releases,
Mm-hmm.
as we know. So we have a badminton. We got a badminton net about 3 weeks ago. We're in the driveway whacking that badminton back, that birdie back and forth, hitting a tennis ball, running around the house, running up and down the stairs. These are great things to get yoga videos online. It's important that the kids can move the energy, and adults. We've got to move the energy. Fiddle things. This is called Pinch Me Dough. It's scented, kind of where you could. It's like Play-Doh but softer. Yeah. Lots of Play-Doh, coloring. Again, processing what they're feeling is critical, and acknowledging that the normal that they are used to, the routine that they crave, is gone. And that's hard for kids. Kids thrive. Our brains love certainty and routine. So those are my number one and number two. Again, breathing. If I'm not breathing all the time, they'll be like, "Mom, breathe." They're telling me to breathe. I'm breathing constantly to regulate myself. So that also is something we do on a regular basis. Those are kind of some high level things. I could give you a lot more, but those are probably my top three things to do right now.
That's awesome. And we have actually a lot of people joining us online. I can see the names scrolling to the right. So if anyone's listening and has a question, I should have done this at the very beginning, but make sure to submit questions on here. We love to take live questions. We'll be ready to do that. We have several already submitted. So take a moment, post us a question. No questions are off limits. You might think that it's a individual question to you. I can guarantee you, there are many other people around the city, state, and country that are dealing with the same thing. So so let's stick on kids for just a second, Kristen, because I know it's so topical right now with school kids being home. Can you maybe go over some don'ts, maybe some top level things that you would just really kind of shy away from? I know I'm a very positive person, so I want to talk about the great things we should be doing, but there probably are a few things that we're doing, myself included, that maybe are not helpful to the situation. So could you maybe touch on that topic?
Absolutely. Number one is shake it off. You're fine. Stop your crying. I'll give you something to cry about. We probably heard that as kids a time or two. Let them express their feelings. Let them express their grief. Let them get it out. When we get it out, we heal. The more we feel, the more we heal. So letting your kids cry, letting your kids process, letting your kids get it out. So that's my number one, not pushing it down, because we know when we push things down, it will manifest in the body and we will stay stuck. If we do not process this, we will stay stuck. Number two is shaming your children. So shame is, I don't feel good enough. It's about ourself, and guilt is about our choices. And guilt can actually propel us to make some positive change. I'm not saying guilt your kids. That's not the message I'm sending. But we do not want to use shame as a parenting tool. Like, why'd you do that? That's kind of a shaming statement. Or that's stupid. I'm not that we would say that, but some people, out of heightened sense of stress, we all have done things that we're not so proud of. Obviously, yelling and screaming. We've all kind of been down that road a time or two. And I have to get myself regulated. Your child will not be able to calm down if you're not calm. So if you've ever been in the car and they're fighting and you're like, "I said, stop yelling," and you're the one yelling. Okay, well, we've got to get ourselves checked. We have to check ourselves as parents and calm ourselves down. Again, that means we're flipped. I've got to get myself regulated to a calm state in order to parent effectively. Then I can help co-regulate, if they're flipped, my child. This is very difficult. So I'm making it sound very easy. That's why I invite people to do the breath work regularly. So when they are triggered, they can go, okay, breathe.
Well, that's what I know. And there have been certain situations where my wife will remind me that let's not fight fire with fire here. Let's, if a kid is emotionally charged, you being emotionally charged is not going to help that situation. Is that what I'm hearing correctly?
Exactly. You're actually, if you ever notice, it gets worse because
Good.
now we're all yelling and
Mhm.
nobody's calm and nobody's regulated.
Yes.
So that's my,
Loud noises.
yeah. And it's easy to do, right? We're home 24/7 and we're stressed. We're trying to work from home. Some of us, we're trying to do the e-learning and teach from home. We're trying to get the kids, occupied and connected with and tended to, and 3 meals a day.
Yeah.
Okay, 3 meals a day. It's a lot of meals.
Yeah.
Then they are hungry. Then they want a snack. And so breathe, calm, regulate. Those are the most important things. And not shutting the kid down. That's so super critical, not shutting the kid down. And when they do have a feeling, when they do want to talk to you, that you're able to acknowledge the feeling. What I see parents miss is that acknowledgement of the feeling, saying that makes sense. You feel, again, reiterating that makes sense. You feel sad. I also think we're missing the boat sometimes on checking in with our kids. Sometimes the behavior is a manifestation of an unmet need. So if we're seeing a lot of acting out, there's probably some feelings that are trapped in there. I recommend if you have young kids to get some feeling. You can get online and get unconsciousdiscipline.org, some feeling faces, and they can point to the faces so they can start identifying their feelings. The movie Inside Out from Disney is a great one if you can rent it right now. That helps pave the way to start naming the feelings. And adults, I have adults do this too. Watch the movie so they can start naming their feelings, identifying their feelings. And that helps equip you as a parent and the child to express themselves in healthy ways. And it takes time. It takes education. It takes us parents getting connected to our own feelings to be able to do that.
Sure. So there was a question here about, somebody had mentioned, all right, I ask my kids these open-ended questions, and oftentimes I get I don't know, the shoulder shrug, the, typical child answer. I have a 9-year-old who loves that. I don't know. How was your day?
Yeah.
Fine. How do we
What'd you do
probe?
at school? Nothing.
Yeah, nothing. Yeah, what'd you do at school? Nothing. Okay, well, I have some
Yeah.
concern. But how do we engage them more? How do we probe them a little bit further to try to at least incrementally get them to open up?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's a dilemma if this is new material for families that they're not used to it. I recommend watching the Inside Out movie together. And I know if you've got older kids, Disney movie spans all ages. So that's the good news. Now, is everybody, all the teens, going to be like, yes, I want to watch the movie? No. What I want is to start conversation, and it has to come from the parent and equipping the child. They might not know what they feel. That's a lot of what children don't really have the language sometimes of how they feel. And that's what I usually say is when they would get in the car, I'd want to know every detail. How was your day? What did you do? Who said, what did so-and-so say? Then what did they say back? And they're like, stop asking me questions. And what I say is, if you want to talk to me, I'm available when you're ready. If you have anything I can see, and I normalize, this may be some grief for you. You were really, and eighth graders, I know, are in fifth graders, in high school seniors, are in college, they're in athletes. Like I said, that's normal to have some sadness about this and maybe some anger.
Well, let's shift
And
on that topic too, because there are a lot of questions about certain age groups and how to handle that. Let's start at the top, and the high school senior. My heart breaks for high school seniors right now. I vividly remember walking across that stage at Noblesville High School back in 2002. When I graduated, it was such an exciting time in life, getting ready to go into my next chapter as a young adult. What advice do you give for parents out there that are dealing with high school seniors? How do you celebrate them in a way while acknowledging the grief that they're having, but shifting that grief to a positivity in the next chapter that they're going to face?
yeah, the first thing is you can't shift it unless you move through it. So I can try to put a mask on and act like it's all okay, but if I'm not processing it, I won't move through it to get to that more acceptance. So it's like the stages of grief. So as parents, we first have to deal with our own grief around it. So the dreams and the graduation parties and the ceremony, and which might happen still some point. We don't know that.
Sure.
But the dream of the June date, we have to acknowledge that it's okay for you to have your grief as parents first, because then we can acknowledge our child's grief around that. It's the expectations of you thought what was going to happen, and it's the final loss. So it's like the last day. It's the final loss. And so first we have to acknowledge our own grief, then we can acknowledge our child's grief around it. And then we can, and I think it's helpful for them to talk to friends about it that are in the same boat, because they're all collectively feeling similar. Now, some people might be pretty disconnected from their feelings. Sometimes we minimize and rationalize it and go, oh, it's not that bad, and then we talk ourselves out of processing the feelings. Once we process the feelings and we get to the other side, a lot of times we'll get to acceptance and we'll go, okay, I can handle this. We can still do something, a Zoom online, and celebrate that way. We can still honor it by all the family getting together and sending cards to the senior, and friends sending cards to each other. Again, it goes back to that empathic witness of the collective grief that they're all feeling. And it may take time. Every senior is not going to process in the same timeline. Grief does not have a specific linear timeline. One person might process it differently than the next person, and it doesn't make it right or wrong. This might not hit them for another several months. Mm-hmm. This might hit them now. It might hit them a week from now. And let them go at their own pace. My main thing is acknowledging that there is going to be grief. There is going to be a sense of loss. And it's okay to feel it and process through it.
That's great. Let's shift a little bit to the other end of the spectrum, toddlers. So I have a 4-year-old, almost 5, should point that out, and a 3-year-old, and I'm not convinced they have half a clue what's going on most of the time. Certainly not when it comes to COVID-19, right? But they certainly sense a difference at home. They can't go and hug their grandparents, which is another question about how do we interact with grandparents. They can't go over to their friend's house all the time. So talk a little bit about toddlers and getting them to understand, or at least comprehend maybe a little bit, the changes that they're feeling.
Absolutely. One, they probably like having mom and dad there. So I want to acknowledge, because they're neurobiologically wired to want to be with their parents. So on some level, they're finding a lot of comfort in this. If my energy is off as a parent with the toddler is going to pick up on that. So if I'm stressed, I'm anxious, I'm trying to work, which is many of us, and they're going to pick up on that. So it's doing regular one-on-one time with that toddler, one-on-one play. So if they want to play Legos, or they want to, whatever they want to play with you with, you're spending that, you're touching base on that one-on-one time. You're helping regulate them by being regulated yourself. And so getting those feelings books out is really critical at this age. Whether this was happening or not, it's very important that they learn what they're feeling. And the inside movie out's appropriate for them too. Now their attention span's a lot smaller. Mm-hmm. And normalizing their feelings. You can get, those sheets along those lines, identifying the feeling faces, but they like play. That's how they process a lot of times, is through play. So if you're playing whatever it is, or some, boys like to kind of roughhouse and move that energy out. That's how that helps them feel safe. That helps that nervous system to say, I am safe, because you're connected, you're present. Parents it's hard right now to be present. I'm constantly checking this, because guess what? This is a distractor.
Yeah.
We've got to put our phones down, and I have to work on this myself, intentionally put my phone down and connect and be present. So the toddler or any child feels safe. You are the one they're looking to feel safe. And so the more regulated we are, the more we're processing, the safer they're going to feel and more attuned to them.
Okay. You had a lot of messages on there that's giving me some anxiety. So make sure after this you clear out your messages, because I was concerned by your screen there.
Oh, so. Did I have so many? Yeah, because I had so many.
Yeah. That's all right. That gives me a little anxiousness there.
We'll breathe.
So, all right, we're going to breathe a lot here. Yeah. So talk a little bit about, I have a good friend, Stephanie, who just wrote a note about kind of explaining the silver lining, that there's a fine line between shame and gratitude, pointing out to kids of how lucky and grateful they should be for something, but also pointing out that you're not trying to shame them. So how do we kind of show them the silver lining in this conversation?
It's very important you're processing the feelings first. You're going to hear me say this 10 times. You got to process it, because what happens is you're stuffing those feelings down. If you go, well, it's not that bad. At least we're together and we have all this time together. We can do that after we've processed. Processing first, acknowledgement second. Then we can get to, well, what are the possibilities here? What are the things you're looking forward to? What are the things that you want to do to celebrate this? Let's come brainstorm some ideas. Let's do a Zoom call. Let's do some cards. Let's reach out to people. Let's do some FaceTimes, whatever. We really got to acknowledge the feelings first before we try to package it up in a pretty bow. And I find parents skip that because they want their kid to be okay, because they feel okay. So if I just positive my way through it, and we skip the processing step and the acknowledgement step, which will keep the student stuck and will keep you stuck, keep your child stuck. So that's my order.
That's great. So talk a little bit about early element. Let's shift a little bit from the processing of the loss, the grief, the decision that was made yesterday. You know, we're kind of working through that process, but we still have a big challenge in front of us these next 4-8 weeks, whatever the schools end up saying when it comes to e-learning. And there could be some parents and grandparents who are trying to help kids get motivated to do e-learning, you know, and they're frustrated. They want to sit and they want to play their Xbox all day. They don't want to work on their e-learning. What can we do to kind of communicate to them how important that is during this time, which might help some parental and grandparental stress during that time?
Yeah, let's acknowledge that it's stressful, first of all.
Right.
We're not getting out of this for free. Like, there's a collective, like, now some are like, you know, it depends on your kid type. They're like, they're done, they've done it all, and they got the rest of the day ahead. We're talking about those kids that are more of a struggle, that they don't want to do it. And the thing is, there's no black and white answer here. There's no wave the wand and make them want to do it. I wish there was. One of the thing is acknowledging that, man, yeah, you really want to do your Xbox. I get that. And having some boundaries in place. So in order to play the Xbox, and they're not going to like it, they're going to have their feelings about that. They're not going to be like, okay, but you got to come up. I always say on Sundays, come up with, here's the routine for the week. Here's what you can earn. You can earn, you know, once you get your e-learning stuff done, then you get so much Xbox time, or then you get so much, you know, gaming time or Netflix or whatever, iPad time or whatever, which is a little challenging because they're on that iPad learning. But then you give them the structure and the boundaries, saying, this is how it's going to go this week. Let's talk through that. And we're clear and we're consistent. That helps. Even when they're in high school, here's, you know, when are you going to get your e-learning done? What's your timeline for that? If you don't get it done, let's talk through that. Here's what that's going to look like. So I always say Sundays, start prepping. Don't wait till the day of, and then you're like, ooh, you're not on your e-learning, and now I'm flustered, and now I'm dysregulated, and then it all blows up from there. Sundays. Now, is this all going to be peaches and cream? No, because we all are stuck at home 24/7. It's not going to be kumbaya all the time. That's where the breathing comes in. Get yourself regulated first. Do some proactive measures in terms of talking about the week. We do this all the time. And they're like, I'm like, we're going to sit down and have a family meeting. They're like, oh, man. I'm like, yep, we got to talk through this stuff. And it's a regular occurrence. It's not just for e-learning. We're doing this as a regular routine. And I encourage, you know, it's going to be bumpy at first, especially if you haven't done it. And this is a whole new learning world for us all. Give it a shot. Be consistent with it.
Yeah, so let's take one more question on children, and I'm going to shift to adults here as well. A question on having an only child. I know one of our deputy mayors has an only child. That presents a whole new set of challenges. Any advice there?
Only children, I think I would give the same feedback. They want your presence. I mean, most kids want our presence, whether they have siblings or not. And it's doing the regular, how are you doing? Check-ins. And taking intentional time. So every hour now when I'm booked with clients back to back, it's harder for me to do this. But what I do is I try to go, hey, love you, or I'll send them a note. I love Post-it notes. I leave these everywhere. So this is like leaving a note on their pillow, leaving a note on their door, and they think I'm cheesy. And this is what I want them to think. Their thoughts, what I say to them become their internal dialogue. So these Post-it notes, although they're cheesy, I use them all the time. So write Post-it notes, leave them notes around the house. Let them know that they're loved. Let them know they matter. Let them know they're important. Those are things I say, and that they're enough, because we all don't feel good enough. And that's shame. And then we want to self-medicate that with alcohol, drugs, shopping, eating, social media. So I'm trying to be proactive about filling up truths. And this is a great way to do it. I know it seems cheesy, do it anyways.
Yeah,
More
that's
cheesy,
great.
the better.
I love that. I'm a big note writer myself, so I completely agree with that tactic. So let's shift a little bit. Life is hard, right? Life was hard before we even dealt with COVID-19. Life has challenges. Life has hills, peaks, and valleys. Marriage is difficult. You're married. Yeah, I know Mark very, very well. Great guy. Julie Jensen and I absolutely adore her. It's been a difficult couple weeks, right? There's huge challenges when you're cooped up and the emotional roller coaster that you're on. From one day starting out with a great chore chart, by the end of the day, it's like in the fireplace, being burned, and we've moved on. So how do we as couples, as families, deal with relational conflict when we're stuck together 24/7?
Yeah. First of all, there will be conflict.
Mm-hmm.
So when couples come in, like, we never fight, I'm like,
yeah, right.
That means we're not really dealing with anything. And then 25 years later, they're like, I'm out the door, because there was no connection there. So one of the things I want to normalize, there's going to be disagreement and there's going to be tension, and you're going to get through it with some tools that can help you. First, you've got to, again, breathe. You're going to get so sick of me hearing me say that. Secondly, we have to acknowledge each other's stress. And I think that's hard to do when we feel like we're right and the other person's out to lunch. We have a hard time acknowledging their feelings, and we have to acknowledge our own feelings to acknowledge their feelings. What I work with a lot on families is some communication structure that they didn't grow up with, that we really need. So one, we have to watch expectations. So if I expected you to unload the dishwasher and I never told you, now I'm resentful. Well, I'm doing everything, and my story that I make up in my mind is I'm doing everything. Okay, not true. But if I do not communicate, hey, would you mind emptying the dishwasher? And the person can say yes or no, right? We have to come together and communicate. One of the things I think we do is we write stories about what we think the other person is saying. So Dr. Brene Brown, who was on 60 Minutes this week, she's a shame researcher, vulnerability researcher. One of the things, and I love this language, is the story I'm making up is you think I'm a low life and don't contribute. I'm making this up, but she says the story I'm making up is. So one, we got to acknowledge each other's feelings. Two, we have to self-regulate. Three, we have to communicate specifically. And what I mean by that is direct, specific. So they're like, I wish you would come in here and take care of things. Well, I don't know what take care of things means. Mm-hmm. I could say, well, tell me what you mean by that exactly. Well, I don't know. Well, then that's going to lead to a lot of conflict. And so be direct. Acknowledge maybe the story you're making up in your mind and check it with the person. I do a lot of this in couples therapy. I feel statements. I know it sounds cliche. It seems silly, but I feel with a core emotion in there from inside out. Those core emotions, the 6 that they lay out and inside out: anger, sadness. I'm giving you a cheat sheet. Anger, sadness, fear, disgust. Those are the 4 people are feeling right now. And those are the 4 you're going to work with the most. Then you have joy and excitement. And so using I feel sad, a lot of people are anxious right now. Let's just call it what it is. So what I said this earlier, I said, I'm a little anxious. I feel a little anxious. I just need to breathe right now. Now, this sounds very kumbaya-ish, and it doesn't always go like that, but I need to breathe. Just give me like 10 minutes to get myself together and get calm. Mm-hmm. And that's not always possible, right? When we're in the middle of chaos, but it is possible for me to breathe. In the middle of chaos, it is possible for me to breathe.
Well, I love that. One of the things that so I'm an oversharer. And so one of the things that we're working on at my house, which I'm sure Julie Jensen's just real thrilled about this. But
vulnerability. We're doing vulnerability.
Yeah, exactly right. Here we are. One of the things that we're working on is acknowledging that we process things differently. I am a quick on the spot, Mr. Fix It. No, nothing's wrong. Let's solve this, move on. Where Julie Jensen tends to needs to process things a little bit slower, wants to think about it, wants to think about her reaction to a situation or question I ask quicker, where I want instant gratification. So how do we work as a couple to kind of communicate that to each other and know that we might just naturally process things differently, and that's okay.
I think first is talk, like you've already identified. I think that's a huge step, awareness. You've already conquered the first step that I work with people on is notice your dance, notice the way you process. Self-awareness is critical in couples and in any relationship. That's why I'm so passionate about people doing their own work. Self-awareness is power. It's empowerment. So the fact that you already know your processor's like, and she
Mhm.
needs some time to think. Very similar to Mark and I. I'm kind of like I can think quick. Mark's like, give me a minute. And I'm like, but
Yep.
whoa, but let's work it out
We
now.
have a minute.
And so I have to recognize and I have to go, okay, he needs a minute. I have to self-regulate through that and acknowledge it's not to do with me. It has to do with how he processes. He'll come back and circle the wagon, similar to Julie. She'll come back and circle the wagon if they're ready. Hopefully that's the case. And then you can talk about it with the I feel statements. Because what I see a lot of people do is displace their anger, displace their frustration onto somebody else. And it's really not about that person. It might have been something that happened at work. It might be about their parents. It might be about a different situation, but they've projected, which means I put that on, a hot potatoed it to my partner and made my partner responsible for my feelings. We have to be responsible for our own thoughts, feelings, and behavior. Very big into ownership. And then there's some people that are so stuck from trauma, that's a whole nother conversation, that aren't capable of doing that. And so that's where therapy comes into play and help and getting outside help.
So let's talk about parenting styles a little bit. So obviously, we're all going to be together these next at least 30 days. We're going to be, and everyone parents differently, right? And we may have conflict amongst parents on how you're handling a situation with our kids, right? Whether it be e-learning or, I know one of the frustrations that we have sometimes is that I'm an essential employee, so I'm at work all day. Julie's at home manning the ship and all this stuff. I swoop in, have my thoughts on certain things that may not jive perfectly with the way Julie Jensen feels about it. What tips do you have for parents to communicate to one another during this time about parenting styles or parenting disagreements?
I'm going to do my parenting prop. This is really important work, is to know, this is called Parenting from the Inside Out by Dr. Dan Siegel. You can see it's very worn. It's important. Not everyone's going to have the time to do this, but my number one thing is you got to dive into why are you parenting the way you're parenting. You got to have some self-insight. Why am I triggered? So one of the things is we all have different triggers. Julie will have a different trigger than you'll have potentially.
Sure.
Sometimes they're the same. And those are rooted pretty deep. So I've got to go, well, why was that such a trigger for me? Oh, because I don't feel respected. Okay, that goes pretty deep. And so then I project this unmet need onto my kid and make my kid responsible, make my spouse responsible for filling that unmet need of me feeling important and that I matter and loved or whatever it is, respected. And so therefore we get into a right or a wrong. I'm right, you're wrong. The way I parent is better than your way you parent is better. You're going to have different ways you're going to approach things. Very rarely will I see exact same feelings about a situation from parents. It's acknowledging the other person's feeling and perspective. It's like bridge building. On my country, I feel like this is the language I speak. In your country, this is the language I speak. Let me walk over here and see if I can get understanding for why you feel the way you do. Okay, I'll walk over here. Now we're in the middle, coming together and trying to get understanding of why the other person feels that way or reacts that way. We want to react instead of we want to respond and not react, but we got to create some understanding. And that's really important in communication. And so doing some self-work on knowing your triggers and why you have that trigger as a parent is critical.
That's awesome. Let's talk a little bit briefly about single parents, single moms, single dads, huge heroes, have a lot on their shoulders right now. A lot of them are probably trying to work from home. And let's give credit where credit's due. But let's give some advice, maybe some tips for them on how to process. I know you're going to tell me that they need to breathe, so I got that for you.
Got that. Check.
Got it. Check. What other tips do we have for those single moms and dads out there, or maybe single grandparents, that are just swimming here and treading water?
Super hard. So first of all, I want to acknowledge all of them. I see you. I acknowledge you. I see how hard it is. I see the exhaustion you have. And that's for all parents, and particular single parents and grandparents. If you can, take some mental wellness breaks. If it's 5 minutes, if it's 2 minutes, put some music on, walk away, go in another room, write it out to get it out, do some kind of reading some inspirational things, listening to a podcast, reading books, phoning a friend and going, help, I'm losing my mind. That's super beneficial right now. Even if you can do a FaceTime and go, I'm going to kill not really, but I feel so dysregulated. They're driving me crazy. I'm losing my mind. That helps to phone a friend, talk it out. And the friend doesn't need to fix it. You just need to vent. And that's what you'd say at the beginning of the call. You don't need to fix it. I love this saying, you don't need to fix it. I just need to get it out. And then that gives them another shot in the arm to kind of go, okay, I can keep going. I can do this. So a support system is really important, even if it's just one person you can call.
That's awesome. Well, great. Well, I have one last question I want to touch on because it's timely here. Actually, two last questions. Easter is around the corner. We've seen birthdays come and go during this time. I've seen some really awesome drive-by happy birthday celebrations. Tips for how families can feel together during this time of a holiday coming up or a birthday coming up? How do they feel connected during that time?
I highly recommend Zoom. So you can get a free account on Zoom. FaceTime, you can also, I learned that you can do a group on FaceTime. You can do multiple people, and you set a time up. You tell everybody, here's when we're going to do it, and you have them get on the call. Number one, have them send cards. Have them send cards to whoever it is, or notes or letters or texts to kind of rally the troops. 3 is decorate that. If you have any decoration, you can either color a card, do some decoration, bake a cake. That's really important. And I like to do, here's my little sticky notes. I like to do a door wrap with all the sticky notes. So when they wake up, it's all the things that you love about them.
Awesome.
Not about their behavior necessarily. It's what you love about who they are. Decorate their door. If you have extra little streamers around, decorate so they feel special and they feel like their birthday is important. I think one of the biggest challenges people are having is deaths right now, and not being able to do a funeral properly and grieve properly. And so that also is hard for kids too, if they lose a grandparent or anybody, and for a parent, anybody. A friend, to be able to grieve properly, and doing a Zoom. I know that doesn't seem like that would be beneficial, and it is. It is. Doing an online service, even if it's in your home. Those are super important right now.
Yeah. So last point, so if I'm sitting here watching us today and I am on the verge, I'm ready to lose it. I need all the help I can get. I know that I'm in a dark space. I am really struggling. What resources can you share if someone's going through that?
Yeah. So here's the first, if it's a safety issue, of course, we have 911.
Yes.
Prevail, if you're in a domestic violence situation, I want to give the phone number to Prevail. This is their 24-hour hotline. It's 317-776-3472. That's if you need any domestic violence support at this point. The Suicidal Prevention Lifeline, write this number down, is 800-273-8255. And right now, it's important that you reach out for help, because some of the signs to look for within yourself are decreased sleeping, appetite, like if you're not eating, the coping skills, your alcohol or drug use has increased. These are concerns that need proactive help, and don't be afraid to seek help through counseling. We've moved to the telehealth platform. There are services out there that can help you. Also, I want to share the disaster distress helpline. So if you are highly dysregulated, you're scared, you don't know where to go for help, this is who to call. It's 800-985 5990. That's 800-985-5990. Or you can text talk with us 66746. So you're going to text talk with us 66746. And then I wanted to give a couple more coping skills, if you don't mind.
Yeah, please.
For people that don't know how to cope with the stress and the uncertainty and the fear and the grief. One of the things I want to say is limit your intake on what you're consuming news, because your nervous system isn't wired for that. So give yourself maybe 5 minutes to catch up on the news and then call it a day and put it all away, is my suggestion. Limit your social media exposure at this point. Avoid alcohol, because I'm seeing an uptick in people using alcohol as the coping strategy right now. And this will keep you in that fight, flight, or freeze place. This will freeze you in that stuck kind of non-tolerant processing place. And we don't want that. So that helps you move through to the calm state. Playing with your pets right now, walking your pets. I know you just got another dog,
Yep.
Chris. And so it's a great time to connect with your pet and really take the time to really be present with that pet and play. This is a great time to play with your pet. So those are really important coping strategies. Exercise, eating. I know the eating's really hard right now, so I want to acknowledge that. We're doing the best we can sometimes, and that's okay. The main thing I'm really trying to get across is that we've got to be processing in real time what's going on, and that's through writing it out, talking through it, meditation, prayer, whatever works for you to kind of get yourself centered. Those are really important kind of daily habits at this point to put into place.
That's awesome. Well, Kristen, thank you so much. You and I had a conversation about a year ago when I was running for the spot that I'm in about the importance of mental health and mental fitness. And if anyone was at our State of the City a few months ago, we talked openly about that. And I said my number one goal is to be very honest about it, be very transparent about it, acknowledge that it's there. I think behind every closed door in Hamilton County, there's some form of mental distress, anxiety, addiction, you name it. We're all touched by it some way. And so we want to have an honest conversation about it. So I appreciate you coming on and having a conversation with us. I actually pulled some statistics, and compared to March of 2019 and March of 2020, we had a 69% uptake in suicidal calls to our EMS line. And that's a shocking number, but it's a real number, and we have to acknowledge it. We have to know that it's there. We know people are going through this. We see it in our own houses. So I may have you back here in the next coming days to do this again, a check-in with our community. I think it's great. I appreciate everyone who joined us, but just know that we are here for you. We're all in this together. Get outside, breathe some fresh air, spend some time with friends and family, and we are going to get this through together. And Kristen, will you lead us on as we leave here today with one last deep breathing exercise?
Absolutely.
Yep.
We're going to do this thing. Everyone's going to do this. Okay, so let's take another deep breath. I recommend you put your feet flat on the floor for some grounding, for some centering, for some support. Feel yourself in your chair, your couch, or wherever you may be. And know that you are not in this alone. We will get through this together. So let's take a deep breath through your nose again. Exhale out your mouth. Let's do one more time and really watch those shoulders. Drop those shoulders down on that exhale, knowing we will get through this together. This will pass at some point. So take a deep breath in. And I invite you just to notice your body after you take that exhale and how much different it feels. Just notice, feel, and be aware of it.
Awesome.
And I'm so grateful for this time.
Yeah, thanks so much. I appreciate everybody. Have a great weekend. And we'll be in touch soon. Thanks so much, Kristen.
Thanks, Chris.
All right. Bye-bye.